All right. Welcome to the Self-Love Masterclass. I am so excited to dive into this topic with everyone today and everyone who's watching afterwards. Thank you, everyone who joined live. And thank you for everyone who's watching this video after. So for anyone who's live, feel free to type into the chat as we go along. If you have any questions that come up, any comments. Let me just make sure I can see the chat really quick as I say that. Beautiful. All right, so feel free to type any questions or comments you have into the chat. We're also going to open this up for some reflection and sharing at the end, but as things come up, you can pop questions, reflections, comments right into the chat. And so we're gonna dive right in. I mentioned earlier before I hit record that my intention for this masterclass was to kind of do a high level overview of what self-love is to me, what it means to me, and kind of offer some new perspectives around self-love and some actionable tools that you can use in your journey, whether it's towards self-love or continuing your to cultivate the depth of self-love or just continuing to nurture your relationship with yourself. I'm just going to offer some reflections and tools. As I mentioned, I did my best to keep this high level. Self-love's a really in-depth, complex thing though, so it was a little challenging to keep it high level. So we're gonna dive in a little bit into more specifics around what it could look like to show up for yourself, to show yourself self-love. And at the end, I'm going to offer some other opportunities that we can dive even deeper into self-love together. So first and foremost, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Justine Harrington. I'm the author of the book Homecoming, A Guide to Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Heart. I usually have my book right next to me. I don't know where it is to show you, but it's a workbook that helps people who are beginning or already well on their healing journey. So I'm an author, I'm a healer, and I'm a coach. And so I'm here to really help people connect with, nurture, and care for themselves. And ultimately, the reason why I do this work is that I believe this is what allows people to fully show up in the world from a place of love and compassion. I was talking to a client about this recently, that we're all just in the human experience. We all have experienced past, whether it's traumas or just experiences that have hurt us. And oftentimes we don't deal with this hurt and pain in the moment, and we continue to carry that with us in life. And that creates wounds inside of us. And so definitely for a long period of my life, the idea of being wounded was something that, if not triggered me, definitely didn't sit well with me. Like, so in my brain, I thought, I'm wounded. That means something's wrong. That means that seems really like a big thing. Like something is flawed within me. That's not the case in any way, shape, or form. Again, it's part of the human experience that we have experiences that hurt us. We have pain from past experiences. We often carry that with us, and that can manifest as wounds within us. We all have that. And so the healing journey to me is really recognizing those wounded places inside of you, recognizing that pain, recognizing your past hurt, and learning to show up for yourself, to show those parts of yourself love and compassion. So ultimately you can heal those. Because oftentimes what happens is we're bringing those wounded parts of ourselves into our everyday lives, into our interactions with people. They color our perspective, they color how we show up in the world. It might show up as reactivity in certain situations. If you've ever had a situation where you kind of flew off the handle and your reaction was, it did not seem necessarily aligned with the situation at hand, that was probably coming from a deeper place within. And that reactivity was not necessarily to what was happening in the moment, but was based on a past experience where you might have experienced pain, and perhaps that part of you is still really protected and still trying to protect yourself, or still causing some sort of reaction within you. And so that's how these wounds can kind of manifest in our lives. And when we're not aware of them, oftentimes they can kind of run the show, and we might start to say like, I have this, this reaction to this thing, or this one thing keeps triggering me and I don't really understand why. It's likely it's coming from a place deeper within you. So in order to heal those places within you, I think you need to learn how to connect with yourself, how to nurture yourself, how to care for yourself. And then you're able to really choose how you show up in the world. You're able to approach your life, you're able to approach your relationships, you're able to approach yourself first and foremost from that place of love and compassion, and that will affect every single part of who you are and every single part of your experience. So that's why I think that this work is very, very important. And I love to work with people just to begin to cultivate this connection with themselves, just to begin to even start to look at this connection with themselves and look at how they might begin to heal themselves and really nurture themselves. So one of the things that I love more than anything is just to really deeply connect with others, to provide a safe space where others can fully and authentically show up, whatever that might mean in a moment. I think that when we're able to begin to fully and authentically show up in those safe spaces, that also helps with, our inward connection. It helps with really embracing and nurturing ourselves. So that is the work that I am here to do, and that I really just enjoy doing and find very fulfilling. So why are we talking about self-love today? I think what I just said kind of details that a little bit, but really self-love, in my experience, is the key to everything. But it's definitely the key to living an aligned and fulfilling life. It's the key to being able to show up fully and authentically you. So it's really being able to plant yourself firmly and this is who I am, and really bring that into the world. So I think it's kind of a funny backwards thing that we experience as humans, where it's a process to find out who we actually are, who we authentically are. Throughout life, again, we have lots of experiences that can either inadvertently or sometimes overtly teach us, this is how you're supposed to show up in the world. This is how you're supposed to behave. You should feel shame around these areas of yourself. So we learn to hide certain parts of ourselves. We learn to curate how we show up in the world. We learn to curate who we are. And that oftentimes hides who we really fully authentically are, first and foremost, again, from ourselves and then from everybody else. So I think that self-love is the key to really peeling back those layers that we accumulate over life and finding out who we are, and then being brave enough to bring that into the world. It's not always an easy process, and it can be really scary when we've learned these certain defense mechanisms, or we've learned to hide certain parts of ourselves. It can feel scary to begin to even just peel back those layers, never mind fully show up as that in the world. And I think that the world needs all of us to find who we are and to fully show up, to fully be who we are. I believe that that is what's going to make the biggest impact in our world right now, in our direct relationships, in our purpose here, in our ability to serve and support other people, and just in our ability to create positive change in this world. I think positive change starts first and foremost, again, with ourselves, and then we can see that ripple effect going into our immediate experience, and ultimately enough ripples create a wave, right? And so I believe that the best way to create change, positive change in this world, is to find out who you are and to fully embrace that person and to fully bring that into your life and into your experience. So with that, self-love is also the key, as I mentioned before, to healing your wounds so you can show up from that place of love and compassion. Again, as I mentioned, when we show up from a wounded place, often we're not showing up as ourselves. We're protecting ourselves. We're being reactive. And we're oftentimes that manifests in ways that might not really align with who we want to be or who we truly are. So healing those wounds so that you can show up from a place of love. And I think self-love is kind of the foundation of true self-care. So I could do a masterclass on this topic alone. I won't dive too far into it, but I do believe that self-care comes from within. I think that a lot of the world has taught us that self-care is what we do. And also I think that there's this concept that self-care requires, it requires money, it requires other people to give us something. So we think of it maybe as like a spa day or getting our nails done, or eating a nutritious meal. And all of those things can be acts of self-care, but what's driving that? How does that make you feel? I do believe that true self-care is as simple and yet sometimes as challenging as just really being able to check in with our needs on a day-to-day basis and show up for ourselves, provide ourselves whatever it is we need. It could be as simple as taking a drink of water when we're thirsty, going for a walk when we're working all day at our computers, we're spinning our wheels. The kind thing to do for yourself in that moment is to get up and go for a walk. I like to pet my dog, just do something other than sit there and like grind because that's what you think you're supposed to do. So it's these little acts of showing up for yourself, checking in with your needs and showing up for yourself. I think that's the true foundation of self-care. And then you can build upon that as far as like, what are some of the bigger things that will really serve me? But you first need to understand yourself to know what will truly serve you. And so understanding is a big component, I think, of self-love. We'll dive a little bit further into that. But all of these things are really, really important to our overall well-being and how we're able to show up again in the world. So self-love, foundation of basically everything. That's why we're talking about this here today. This is why it's a topic very near and dear to my heart. I've been on my own self-love journey. And so that's why we're going to dive into this a little bit more. So first and foremost, self-love. It's like one of those huge, big words. Like, and I think that people have, I think that our society in general tends to have like this really grandiose idea of what self-love is. And I know for me at one point in time, I thought self-love what I thought of self-love is really kind of like movie-esque, like those like rom-com show, like movies of like you fall in love and like that's what I thought of self-love. Like it was like this grandiose thing that seems so unachievable to me because it meant to me it meant like never really being upset, never doubting myself, never judging myself, like all of these things that seemed rightfully so impossible to me and that are still impossible to me. Like that's what I thought self-love was. And so it almost I was setting myself up for failure by thinking that's what self-love was because it just seemed so unattainable to me. So I'm going to offer you a new definition of what self-love is. This is one that has worked really well for me and really resonates with me. So self-love is simply the act of showing up for yourself. So again, that simple and that challenging sometimes. So it's not this grandiose idea of like, oh, when I achieve self-love, it means I won't doubt myself. It means I won't feel insecure. It means I won't ever have a judgmental thought. That's all bullshit. That's impossible. Self-love is recognizing that those things are going to happen and showing up for yourself anyways. So what does it mean to show up for yourself? The core of it, I believe, is being someone that you trust and that you can rely on for support. So it's being the person that you need in any given moment. It could mean being your own best friend, your own partner, your own parent, your own cheerleader. It's just really being there for yourself, fully and wholly. When we think about ourselves, this was like a really mind-blowing thing when I realized that I'm in a relationship with myself. I never viewed myself as in a relationship with myself before. I never really thought that much about my connection to myself. And so when I realized that I am actually in a relationship with myself, I'm actually with myself 24/7. So it is arguably the most important relationship that I have. It really blew my mind because that forced me to look at what my relationship with myself was. And at the time that I had this realization, my relationship with myself was not a positive one. I would say it was borderline a toxic one. So I think that shifting my perspective to first and foremost recognizing I am in a relationship with myself, that helped me both to recognize the ways that I was not serving myself in that relationship. And it also allowed me to recognize all the ways that I could show up for myself. So very similar to if you were in a partnership or a friendship or a relationship with a child. All of these relationships, they require time, they require attention, they require energy, and they require intention. Relationships need all of these things to flourish. And so if you're not viewing yourself as in a relationship with yourself, you might not be giving yourself the time, energy, and intention that you need to really cultivate a positive relationship, to really cultivate a deep connection with yourself. And if we go back to what we're just talking about as far as what it means to show up for yourself, it's showing up for yourself in all of those ways that you would expect anyone else that you're in a relationship with, a loving relationship, to show up, to care for you, to support you, to be an empathetic listener, to be curious, not to judge, but to really show up from a place of care and compassion. So these are all things that we are able to do for ourselves. And that really is the foundation of self-love, is first and foremost recognizing that we're in a relationship with ourselves. And along with that, self-love and relationships in general, they're not always easy. So again, if we go back to this idea that I had originally around this grandiose vision of what self-love is, it was like rainbows and butterflies. And when I achieve self-love, nothing will hurt anymore and everything will be great. Yet, like I said, that's bullshit. Relationships are not easy, but they can be incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. And so what that means, from my perspective, what it means to be in a relationship with anybody, including yourself, means that you can be frustrated with yourself, disappointed with yourself, angry with yourself, and you can still show up for yourself with care, compassion, and empathy. Again, just as you would to your child, just as you would to your partner, just as you would to a dear friend. I'm sure that we've all had experiences with one or all of those types of relationships where we're incredibly frustrated, we're disappointed, we're angry. And yet, when we're showing up fully and authentically ourselves, it's all of our intention to care for and support the other person, to try to empathize with the other person, to show the other person compassion, despite how we're feeling. Both these things, I think, in a healthy relationship can and do coexist. And the very same is true for our relationship with ourselves. All right. So we already talked about some things that self-love is not. It's not this grandiose, perfect, ideal rom-com type of relationship where everything's great and nothing goes wrong. Although there usually is the part in the rom-com where, like, things go off the rails and then it comes back. That's more realistic to all relationships, including the one with ourselves. But self-love is also not a one-time set it and forget it type of thing. Again, I think this goes back to my kind of idealization of what I thought self-love was previously. There's like this moment where everything clicks and everything's perfect and like everything's rainbows and butterflies. No, that's not really how it works. Self-love requires consistent check-ins with yourself, continuous attention and intention, and ongoing care. So I do believe that as you start to connect with yourself deeper and as you start to learn how to truly show up for yourself on a consistent basis, self-love becomes easier in some ways, but it's not this, there's no magic secret to it. There's no moment in time where everything like is just rose-colored glasses. It requires that same, again, energy and intention and focus that all of our other relationships require. So it really is a lifelong journey. All right. And so we're going to take just a couple of minutes here to do a quick check-in journaling prompt. So I have 3 prompts up here on the screen. I invite you to pick just one of them, whichever one resonates with you, and dive into that one specifically. So our journaling prompts are: do you give yourself the same time, energy, and intention as your other relationships? Journaling option number 2, how do you talk to yourself? Is it the same way you talk to your child, best friend, or partner? And journaling option number 3 is, are you kind, empathetic, and compassionate to yourself when you're feeling judged, hurt, or upset? So again, these are all kind of meaty journaling prompts. So I invite you to pick just one. I will be sending these out for anyone watching live. I will be sending these out with the replay email, so you can dive into the other ones at a future time if it resonates with you to do so. But pick just one for now. And we're going to take just a couple of minutes and journal through these. All right, moving along. What is the first step to show up for myself? So we've defined kind of a new perspective on what self-love is, the act of showing up for yourself. We've talked about what this looks like, what this actually means. Talked about the fact that we are in relationships with ourselves. So the sooner we can acknowledge that and then acknowledge what that relationship looks like, the more we can work to create the relationship that's going to serve us best. And so now, what is the first step towards actually doing the self love thing and showing up for yourself? So self awareness is key here. Self awareness, I believe, is key to all growth and change. And so, first and foremost, let's bring some awareness around the ways that you are not showing up for yourself. And so, this could look like a couple of things, many things not included on this list as well. But some common themes that I've seen are this could look like perfectionism or holding yourself to high expectations. This could look like judging or ridiculing yourself. This could look like putting the needs of others first before your own. This could look like placing the opinions of others before your own opinion, or saying yes when you don't want to, aka not having or holding strong boundaries for yourself. So I think that it's important to first and foremost look at how we're not showing up for ourselves, because this right here is the key to it. It might feel a little backwards, but it really is the key to then learning how to shift these behaviors in a way that is showing up for yourself. And so we're gonna take another couple of minutes right now, just to work through this one journaling prompt, which is, and maybe just journal through one or two things. There could be more. I know when I first started thinking about this and going through these exercises, there was a freaking lot of ways I was not showing up for myself. But maybe pick whether it's from that list or something else, whatever stands out to you more the most as far as the major ways or major way you're not showing up for yourself, and just do a little bit of journaling around that. So we're going to take probably just 2 minutes here, and then we'll keep moving forward. All right. So if you just journaled and identified some ways that you're not showing up for yourself, you might be feeling like, shit, look at what I'm doing. I'm not showing up for myself in these ways. But honestly, that's great that you've identified these things. This awareness is the first step to showing up for yourself. Again, I know it seems a little maybe counterintuitive or backwards to start by looking at self love, by looking at the ways that you're not showing up for yourself. But oftentimes, the ways that we're not showing up for ourselves or not serving ourselves are coming from those wounded places inside of us. They are coming from a place of trying to protect ourselves or keep ourselves safe, keep ourselves from feeling some sort of pain or some sort of hurt. And so it's coming from these wounded places. And so if we can learn to show up for these parts of ourselves, for these, again, I know that wounds is a hard word for some people to really connect with that first, but if we can show up for these parts of ourselves that are hurt, are scared, are wounded, then showing up for ourselves the rest of the time becomes infinitely easier. And honestly, showing up for these parts of ourselves is how we heal them. Showing up for, showing care, showing compassion for these parts of ourselves that, again, are scared, are hurt, are trying to protect ourselves. That's how we heal these parts of ourselves. And again, when we heal these parts of ourselves, we're not just showing ourselves care and compassion, we're able to then show up in the world from a place of love, from a place of care and compassion. If we can give that to ourselves, we can give that in spades to the people around us. And it's going to ultimately just change the way that we show up, because we're going to be showing up from a place of openness rather than a closed off place of protectiveness. So the basis of self-love. So self-love starts from within. So again, with these areas that you might have identified that you're not showing up for yourself, or maybe these behaviors or actions that are not fully serving you, I encourage you, rather than, I know in my past experiences, I was so judgmental of myself, and especially the parts of myself that I felt insecure about, or that I deemed, less than or unworthy, those parts that I wanted to hide. I would judge and ridicule myself, and that really kept me in a toxic cycle. The more I judged, the more I ridiculed, the worse I felt about myself, the more I tried to hide, the more I tried to judge. So it really was a difficult cycle to get out of. So I encourage you that, rather than judging or ridiculing, or even trying to think about how do I change these behaviors, before you even start to think about that, instead seek to understand where these behaviors are coming from. So again, these ways that you're not showing up for yourself, these behaviors that you have that are not serving you, the first step, even before you say, how do I change these, is to seek to understand where they're coming from. So some questions to ask here. You can ask, what is the intention behind this behavior? So again, for me in the past, I judged myself a lot, and I was very hard on myself. If I didn't live up to some very high level of often unachievable expectations I had for myself, I was my own worst enemy. I really, really just ridiculed myself. I made myself feel bad. I made up these stories about how other people must be perceiving me, must be thinking of me. I really drove myself crazy. I would ruminate on a specific situation or interaction endlessly, on all the ways that other people might be perceiving me or might be judging me. And it was really this, again, toxic cycle that I was stuck in. When I stopped to investigate, where is this coming from? What is the intention behind it? I then was able to realize that it was coming from a place of being scared of not being enough. And the reason why I was scared of not being enough was because I deep down didn't believe myself to be enough. So I really had to investigate where that was coming from within me. But first, identifying the intention of, I'm hard on myself because I'm scared. The fear was kind of the driving force of the behavior. So first and foremost, identifying that behavior is coming from a place of being scared allowed me to both understand myself more and begin to show up for that fear with care and compassion. Rather than continuing to judge and ridicule myself, I was able to say, you know what? I see that you're scared. Let me just be with myself in this moment of feeling scared. And instead of compounding that, let me just care for myself for a moment. And that started to diffuse the fear a little bit. Other things that you can ask yourself are, what thoughts drive these behaviors? So oftentimes we're just on autopilot. We're just going, we're doing, we do the same things we've always done, we react the same ways we always react. And there's a constant stream of thoughts that are running through our minds that we might not even take the time to acknowledge. So when we can start to pause and say, what am I thinking when this comes up? What thoughts are running through my mind in this, the constant thought reel that we have going on? What thoughts are running through my mind when X behavior comes up? We can start to, again, just begin to understand where that behavior is coming from, what is driving it. I think a layer deeper than thoughts, our thoughts are, they're always there, for better or for worse. They're that constant kind of reel going through our head. So a layer deeper than thoughts is your feelings. Is there an emotional pattern that comes up along with the behavior, along with the ways you're not showing up for yourself? Is there a physical sensation? Is there physical emotion? Is there an emotion that you're trying not to feel with these actions or behaviors? Just beginning to ask yourself these questions and become aware is helping you to understand what is driving those behaviors. And then with understanding comes the ability to empathize and show yourself compassion. And so really what empathy is being able to understand another person's feeling or perspective. That's what empathy is. And so when we're able to do that for ourselves, when we're able to begin to understand where certain things are coming from, where certain behaviors are coming from, especially those behaviors that are not serving us and that are the opposite of self-love, not showing up for ourselves, we're then able to empathize with our own experience. And then we're able to, again, like I just said with my example of my, my negative thought cycles and judgment and ridicule, I was able to understand this is coming from a scared place inside. And that allowed me to feel empathy for that part of myself and then start to show that part of myself compassion, instead of, exacerbating the fear by continuing to judge and ridicule and almost, I was judging the fear, which I imagine just made it even more scared, right? I was able to start to show myself love and compassion. And so when you understand, you're able to begin to do that for yourself as well. And again, this is not a overnight thing. This is not like a magic switch that we can flip. This is not a one and done thing. It's a constant process of showing up for yourself in this way. But the key to it is that self-awareness and beginning to understand. And this is the foundation of self-love. It's caring for your inner world and emotions. It's seeking to understand, empathize, and support yourself, especially when it's hard. So like I mentioned before, it might feel very counterintuitive to start to go to these places that maybe we have ignored in the past, these parts of ourselves that hurt, these parts of ourselves that might feel pain, that might be scared. When we think of self-love, we often think of like the lightness and rainbows, butterflies, everything's great. That's not what real self-love is. Real self-love is showing up for yourself when you need it the most. And these are the parts of yourself that need love the most. These wounded parts of yourself, these parts that are scared, these parts that have felt pain. These are the parts of yourself that oftentimes we ignore and we even judge. And these are the parts of ourselves that need us the most. So when we're able to start to recognize these parts of ourselves and show up for these parts of ourselves, that's when we're really able to start to cultivate this connection to self, this love, this care, this compassion. And that's what self-love is. It's showing up for yourself in the good moments. It's showing up for yourself in the fucking hard moments. It's all of that, just like any other relationship. All right. So really quick really quick journaling prompts. Probably we'll spend 2 or 3 minutes on these. If you want to just write through, again, I will send all of these in the email afterwards. But if you want to start to write through, how will you seek to understand yourself? So my intention here is like, what does this look like in your everyday life? Because as I mentioned, this is not a one and done thing. This is not something that once these things click, that everything will be all rose colored glasses and everything. It's something that you need to do and focus on every day. You need to show up for yourself every day. And you know what? Some days that looks different than it does other days, just like in any other relationship. But moving forward on a more day-to-day basis, how will you seek to understand yourself? And then how will you show yourself care and compassion, especially in challenging moments? So take 2 or 3 minutes and just write through your thoughts around those. All right. So as you wrap up those journaling prompts, I have a couple of invitations of ways that you can dive deeper into everything that we talked about today and all things self-love and basically nurturing and caring for yourself and your relationship with yourself. So I have my book, Homecoming, A Guide to Get Out of Your Head and Into Your Heart. I will link to all of these in the email afterwards as well. And that's available on Amazon. That really goes over my entire up to the point that I wrote it, healing journey, how I started that journey, how I started to really cultivate that connection to myself and begin to approach myself from that place of self-love. It is a workbook, so there's lots of exercises, writing exercises, prompts, things that will help you engage with those themes and topics as well. So homecoming is one option. I have an inner child workshop coming up this Friday, October 1st at Ascension NXT. It's in Warwick on Jefferson Boulevard. So inner child work is a badass way to show up for yourself and to show yourself self-love. And so like we talked about, oftentimes these wounded, hurt places inside of us are from past experiences, a lot of times from childhood. So the work that I do around inner child work is really showing up for those past versions of yourself and showing those past versions of yourself the love, the support, the care, the compassion that they really needed in those moments. And so that really helps to heal those past parts of yourself and those wounded parts of yourself. So again, I have that workshop coming up this Friday, October 1st. I will link to that in the follow-up email as well. And I'm also launching a self-love program next month. It's beginning in October. And so this is an in-depth deep dive into your relationship with yourself. We're going to focus a lot on all of those ways that might be hindering you or barring you from self-love, all those ways we might not be showing up for ourselves, and really dive into the root of where those are coming from so that we can change that, change the root, change our inner world, change our beliefs that are supporting all of those different ways that we might not be showing up for ourselves, so that we can begin to really create the relationship that we want with ourselves and really begin to show up and create our reality in a way that serves us. So that's going to be an 8-week program. It's going to be a community-based program. So a lot of the work that you'll be doing will obviously be work with yourself, lots and lots of journaling prompts. We'll have weekly teachings, journaling prompts, but we'll also have community connection calls and a community space where we can all share what's coming up for us, share our experiences. There is such power in being able to fully show up authentically in a group of people doing the same work that are just going to love and support you. So that program, again, begins in October. It's an 8-week program. It is a deep dive into a lot of things we talked about and then some. So that program is $444. There's also a VIP upgrade option for one-on-one sessions with me. That's $777. So I will link to those as well. The inner child workshop coming up is $88. And then the book is $15.99. So we have options across the board as far as ways that you can continue to dive into this. And so for anyone who's watching the replay, please feel free to reach out, your reflections, your feedback, your experience in this masterclass, any questions that you have. I am here for you. So thank you for showing up for yourself today. This was self-love. This was self-love at its finest. So thank you for showing up, and I hope to talk to you soon. So I'm going to stop the recording here.